This is one of the early lectures in this course, and so we're going to be talking a lot about vocabulary words and concepts that we're going to be using to explore the stories that we're going to be talking about this semester. I'll tell you a few stories today. This is not going to be a story-packed, adventure-filled lecture for you, but we're going to be talking about some important concepts. First of all, we're going to be talking about the three different types of stories that you would study, that you are studying in a mythology course. What scholars who study mythology divide into three different types of stories. You see all three of them on the screen there, and we're going to be looking at them in order. At the top of our list, you see our true myths, or what some scholars call divine myths. These, well, you'll pick up on the pattern that we're going to follow as we outline the different distinctions between these stories. These are stories that take place in a time period that we call a primordial time period. That word primordial refers to the very, 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 very start of time. Or even sometimes these stories start off before time began. Or these stories start off when the earth was young. These kind of stories. Right at the very, 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 very first start of things. The characters in these stories are supernatural characters. They are monsters, well, gods and goddesses, of course, but supernatural monsters, kind of these supernatural beings that you don't bump into on the street corner. All right. So it takes place in a time that wasn't last week or last century or even the last millennium, but way, way, way at the start of time. They involve characters that you just don't, you know, meet in the grocery store, supernatural characters. And their function is what we call an etiological function. Or sometimes you'll see it spelled with an A-E at the start, etiological function. Etiological functions to these stories. Etiology means the trying to understand why things happen the way they happen. Or why did we start doing things the way we started doing them? Or where did something come from? Or why does nature behave the way that it does? Right here, we're going to talk about three vocabulary words. Two of them are going to show up in the course quite often. One of them is going to show up maybe once. The first one, etiology. I just explained to you what that means. It means looking at the source of things, the origin of things. Why do trees grow straight up in the sky? Why do trees put roots into the ground? Why do we have the four seasons of the year? Why did we start doing this or that or the other thing? The origin of things. Etymology. Some of you maybe know the meaning of the word etymology. Etymology refers to the origin of words, the history of words. And every once in a while, we'll be talking about the source of the words that we're using because that's kind of interesting. I like language, and so I like to think about language. I like to think about the history of language, and so, well, we'll be talking about etymology every once in a while. Entomology, some of you know because you've had biology class. Entomology, entomology, entomology. That's the study of insects. I know some of you knew that. It's a study of insects, and we will have a story about a spider, but probably entomology won't come up very much. But these are three words that sound very close to each other. Two of them we're going to be using in the course quite a bit. The first one on the list we're going to be using a lot, etiology. Etiology explains the origin of things. Let me give you an example of a quote-unquote true myth. Okay. Now, when I say true myth, I don't mean like the story really happened in the way you and I would say that things really happened. Okay. But true myth, that word true just means a pure myth, that this is exactly a myth. Okay. I'm not even sure the ancient Greeks believed these stories really happened the way that you and I would say that something really happened. Um, that's another lecture. We'll get to that kind of discussion later. But here's a myth of that serves an etiological function. Okay, maybe you've heard this story. I don't know. It's one of the foundational stories of Greek mythology. Um, well, it starts off with Hades. Hades is the god of the underworld. And he's having a hard time finding a wife. I mean, when you're the god of the underworld, you don't get too many second dates, okay? You go out with a girl and you say, well, what do you do? I do this. What do you do? I'm the lord of the underworld. And, well, you know, that kind of kills it. I mean, the crazy chicks love him, but we're not talking about crazy chicks. We're talking about looking for a wife, okay? Well, he's having trouble finding a wife. So he goes to his brother Zeus, and he says to Zeus, you see the name Zeus on the screen there. You see where it says L Jupiter? You're going to be seeing that a lot. That means the Latin name, the Roman name is Jupiter. The Romans are going to adopt the Greek gods. We're going to talk about why that's the case by the end of this unit. But the Romans call him Jupiter. The Greeks call him Zeus. Same guy, same god. Well, Hades goes to his brother Zeus and says, Zeus, will you give me your daughter Persephone to be my wife? Persephone is Zeus's daughter. Yes, that means Persephone is Hades' a niece. Persephone is Zeus's daughter that he has with his sister Demeter. You see that name on the screen. The Romans called her Ceres. And yes, this is all incredibly gross. Get used to it. When we're talking about divine myth, we're talking about true myth, we're talking about a limited gene pool, okay? There's only a few of them, and so, well, you end up with this kind of gross stuff, alright. Anyway, Hades goes to Zeus and says, will you give me your daughter Persephone to be my wife? Now, does Hades ask Persephone? No. Does Hades ask her mother Demeter? No. Hades says, sure, come and get her anytime you want to. And so, one day, Persephone is out in a field and she's picking some flowers. And you may be able to make out the image on the screen here. I hope you can. Hades comes tearing up out of a hole in the ground in his chariot. Over here, let me see if I can get this to work. Okay. Over here you have Hades. He's grabbed, he rushes in his chariot, he grabs Persephone. There's Persephone here. Hope you can make that out. He grabs Persephone and goes, does donuts in the field and heads back down the hole and goes back to the underworld. Over here, you see a woman. Over here, you see Mercury, one of the gods. We'll get back to this story later. Like I said, this is one of the foundational stories in Greek mythology, so we're going to come back to... Let's erase all that ugly ink stuff. There we go. We'll be back to this story. I'll fill in the details later. I'm just telling you the broad outline, okay? Hades comes bursting out of the ground on his chariot. He grabs Persephone, takes Persephone down to the underworld. Well, this ticks off Persephone's mother, Demeter. She's upset and she's mad. She's mad at Hades, she's mad at Zeus, and she's sad that she's lost her daughter to the underworld. And so, well, Demeter, she is the god who's in charge of agriculture. And so she decides that she's not going to allow any food to be produced while her daughter is away. Well, there's no food for anybody to eat. No humans can eat any food. No gods can eat any food. And so everybody's upset at Demeter. And so Zeus goes down to the underworld and he talks to Hades and he says, look, will you let Persephone come back? Maybe this wasn't a good deal. Maybe you can break up with her and bring her back. The problem is that while she's been in the underworld, Persephone has eaten 6 seeds of the pomegranate fruit. I'm not a big pomegranate fan. I'm not sure I've ever even eaten a pomegranate. So I put a picture up in case you're like me and you don't really know what pomegranate is. She ate, in one telling of the story, she ate 6 seeds In one telling the story, she ate 8 seeds. Like I told you in one of the last videos, if you try to use your logos to understand muthos, you'll go mad, okay? If you try to figure out, well, how many seeds did she really eat? We're not talking about what really happened. We're talking about a story that changes. And by the end of this presentation, you'll see why there's a difference in whether some people say she ate 6 seeds or whether she ate 8 seeds. Anyway, back to the, where are we? Come back here. Okay, back to the story now. Well, Persephone has eaten 6 or 8 seeds of a pomegranate that belongs to Hades. And Hades says, I'm not going to let her go back because she ate 6 of my pomegranate seeds. Yes, it's stupid. Well, Zeus finally works things out. So because Persephone ate 6 of the seeds, she gets to come back and be with her mother Demeter for 6 months out of the year, and then she goes back to the underworld to live with Hades for the other 6 months of the year. And when Persephone is with her mother Demeter, then the food grows and agriculture prospers. But when Persephone goes back down to the underworld, Demeter gets sad and depressed, and she doesn't let food be produced. And you see, that explains why we have a growing season and a non-growing season. That's why we have summer and winter. And depending on which part of Greece you live in, if you live in the warm part of Greece, then you have 6 months of growing season, and so you tell everybody that Persephone ate 6 seeds. If you live in the northern part of Greece, you only have a 4-month growing season, and so Persephone has to go back to Hades for 8 months because she ate 8 seeds, and her mother Demeter is angry and depressed for 8 months. And that's why you have a shorter growing season in the north and a longer growing season in the south. That's what I mean by an etiological story. This story is one of the foundational stories of Greek mythology. We'll be coming back to it, fleshing it out, getting into the details later, but that's the broad outline. And, well, you see that serves an etiological function. It explains where the seasons come from.